everyone, Christopher Ludwig here. Welcome back to Automotive Logistics and Supply Chain Live. And what an exciting afternoon we've been having, talking new mobility with the likes of Arrival, hearing about GM transforming its supply chain during the pandemic. And that leads us onto a really fascinating topic here with a special guest further in the mobility side of the sector, with Hyperloop Transformative Technology. It doesn't come around that often in the sector, and we have a few companies pursuing some aspect of it. And I'm really excited to have with us Juan Quintana, who's the Chief Strategy Officer for Hyperloop Transformative Technologies, Hyperloop TT. Juan has a leading role in strategy there, and also wears a couple of other hats on the side as well, which perhaps he'll talk about too. And we're going to hear from Juan on the development of Hyperloop, particularly in the context of cargo transport logistics. And we'll have some time for your questions after the presentation. So put them through, and I'm going to hand over to Juan. Oh, just 1 second, Juan. You have you muted there? Can we? No, can't hear you just at the moment. Just bear with us a second, if you can. Try again. Okay. We both apologies whilst we have we just sort the sound out there. Yeah, I think. Yeah, Juan, can I ask you, Juan, to do the classic sign out and sign in again, the turn off and on again. When we're talking about technology, that is always the go-to first solution. It was working just a moment about. Whilst Juan is signing back on, let me just tell you a little bit more about what we have coming up over the next sessions. Right after this, we're going to be talking about packaging and container management with Toyota, Ford, and then Rivian, as well as CHEP. So some exciting sessions there. We kind of carry on our new mobility topics and new startups. We've got a session on finished vehicle logistics that features Lucid, of course, a new brand new EV company that's just released its production vehicle. And we're going to finish the day with a startup session, again, hearing from the likes of Rivian, Ineos Automotive, and others. So a lot more coming up. And whilst Juan comes back in, perhaps it's just worth just kind of a quick reminder about the Hyperloop technology, which of course we first all heard about thanks to a gentleman known for founding another startup in California. This has led to a number of different companies which are pursuing the Hyperloop technology. And Juan is back. Juan, can we hear you now?
Yes, I can hear you. Can you hear me too?
That's wonderful, and we can hear you too.
Great.
So here we go. As I was saying, sometimes with technology, you need to turn it off and on again. And away we go. I'm going to pass it over to Juan, and we'll come back at the end.
So let's talk about a technology that I hope works better than my audio. So very sorry for the interruption. It's really a pleasure to be with you, and thank you very much for the invitation and having the chance to show you the Hyperloop technology. So the first slide, Chris, I appreciate it. Thank you. So I want to speak to you about the technology regarding Hyperloop, but in the context of the logistics, and more specifically in the environment of the port logistics, everything that has to do with shipping containers. We know that there are three main challenges that the industry is facing. The first one is that the international freight transportation is responsible for about 7% of the global greenhouse emissions, something that is very well known by all the audience, I'm sure. And second challenge has to do with the inefficiency of the system. So everything that has to do with offloading and unloading, combined with the increased shipping volume, has drastically increased the port entry wait times, which is sometimes really a difficult challenge to manage for the transportation companies. And we're talking about, even in some cases, about up to six hours at some ports worldwide. But also everything that has to do with the lack of trucks and the shortage of drivers, it is also behind the inefficiency of the system, in our view. Once cargo leaves the port, the delays caused by the congested infrastructures, I mean the highways and the motorways, and all the trucking routes, they are really increasing dramatically all the operational costs. Only in the US, there is an analysis that is showing us that this inefficiency in terms of congestion is costing the whole system about $6.5 billion annually. So what's next? Please. Yeah, how can we solve these major issues, these main challenges that I just mentioned? And what is, in our view, what is going to define the future of supply chain logistics? So next is, we think that with Hyperloop TT, we are creating the first transportation breakthrough in a century. So how we do it? How does the system work? Sorry. Next slide, please. You will see here an animation where you can see that we are designing Hyperloop in Hyperloop Transportation Technologies from really the scratch. So we are designing an emission-free transportation that is using 100% renewable energy. So the energy efficient system by design, as I told you, from zero, it's really eliminating all the environmental impact of the transportation of both passengers and cargo. Next, the Hyperloop system, and this is the first added value of our approach, is safely bringing the airplane speeds to the ground. So the system is able to reach the speed of sound, accelerating from 0 at 0.1 Gs to achieve, as I told you, the maximum speed of sound, which is about 1,200 kilometers per hour, about 7,600 miles per hour. Next, the system is fully autonomous and is fully connected, meaning that we are eliminating the operational cost and the risk that is behind the human error. So the fully connected and autonomous national and international tube infrastructure will redefine the transportation for generations to come, in our view. Next. The system, so in summary, is creating a never seen before efficient, safe, sustainable, frictionless, profitable, and high-speed transportation mode. How we do it in Hyperloop TT? Next, please. How it works. So Hyperloop TT is able to achieve all of these transportation possibilities due to the unique system architecture that you can see on this slide. The system is eliminating the friction that makes high-speed transportation inefficient by a very important technology, which is magnetic levitation. By this levitation, the capsules are able to reach, as I told you, the speed of sound in combination with a vacuum tube environment that is increasing the safety and the reliability of the system, eliminating everything that has to do with weather or weather conditions or track obstructions or everything that has to do with the normal environment of the other transportation modes. So what do you think? It is something that is distant in the future? Next, please, Chris. We think, in our view, that Hyperloop is happening now and is something that is not so distant. And let me show you in the next slide what are the critical technology components that we have already in place. We have successfully tested at a scale, not yet a full scale, but at a scale we have already tested all the different technologies that I mentioned. And now we are undergoing the integration and the optimization of Hyperloop TT in the Hyperloop TT European Research and Development Center in Toulouse, France. You can see in the different slides, in the different pictures, there, the tube at full scale, real scale, 1-to-1, the vacuum machines, the first full-scale capsule, or the full-scale airlocks that we will be using to produce the vacuum into the tubes. So next, please, the projects that we have in place now, as I told you, is the Research and the Development Center in Toulouse, in France, but also 2 additional projects. One in Abu Dhabi, in the Middle East, which is the first commercial passenger prototype that will serve as the location also of the finalization of the international safety and certification guidelines. And the third initiative we have is the first commercial route that we hope will have in the Great Lakes region. In that region, we have conducted and publicly the first comprehensive Hyperloop feasibility study. And that feasibility study is demonstrating that the system is really transformative from the social point of view, from the environmental point of view, and from the economic point of view. So having this overall view of the technology and the system, what are we doing in the fields of logistics? And this is just a portion of the different initiatives we have in logistics, but it is the most advanced one today. We have a joint venture in place with the Port of Hamburg, with the operator of the Port of Hamburg, HHLA. As I told you, we have a 50-50 joint venture to leverage the Hyperloop technology and leading the port automation to expand port capacity while reducing the carbon emissions and the local congestions, together with the fixing the challenges that have to do with the shortage of drivers and the inefficiency of the port operations. So next, we are designing a cargo prototype, as you can see on the slide, that will enable the port operators all over the world to offload cargo directly from the ships into awaiting Hyperloop capsules. Once loaded, the capsule will move inland to off-dock terminals, to dry port, or to distribution centers. So this will allow the terminal operators to geographically separate the terminal yard and the hinterland operations. So in that way, they can expand the port capacity, because you know that everything that has to do with the ground, the port, is an expensive asset and surrounded by cities that they don't love to have ports around. So the Hyperloop, as you can see on the slide, the solution will drastically increase the sustainability, the speed, the reliability of the shipping method, which is the shipping containers and the sea transportation that is responsible for about 90% of the global trade. The system can be scaled up or down to meet specific port demands. And also it's a very flexible system, able to adapt to the requirements and to integrate easily into port operations. Next, please. So in these different pictures, you see that Hyperloop will mitigate the congestion of the ports, as I told you, by connecting the ports with a high-speed system able to reach dry ports, distribution centers, inland ports, and so on. So we will be able to benefit the local communities with less noise pollution, with better air quality, and with safer motorways and streets. Next, our approach is a fully automated system. And as I told you, not only for the pure Hyperloop transportation, but also for the last mile transportation of containers. So our solution is an end-to-end automated solution. And there you can see our approach to the fully autonomous truck, able to deliver the last 100 miles from the port, from the dry port or from the distribution center to the end customer. Next, future iterations of the system will look to connect ports with a broader international Hyperloop infrastructure to enable everything that has to do with the line hauls, with the long distance transportation in a fully automated way. Next, our vision is to integrate this into national and international networks. And as you can see, in comparison with the other transportation modes, we think that Hyperloop, in terms of speed, reliability, and eco-friendly, will be the leading transportation mode. We think that we can compete straight in terms of capacity with the trucking and with the railway. And we think that in terms of flexibility, will be at the same level of the trucking transportation and the railway transportation. So next, we think that the future is now, and that this joint venture between Hyperloop TT and the Port of Hamburg is building the port of the future to solve the current challenges, as I shared with you, and we are preparing the long-term innovation and expansion of the system. So thank you very much. That's all, and more than happy to answer your questions and getting into the details.
Juan, thank you so much again. What a fascinating piece of technology, and particularly interesting from my side to see the application, which is, I mean, futuristic, but as you pointed out, not really in the future, right? I mean, or not all of it needs to be in the future. That some of this is coming up more in the short term, and already there are people, companies in the supply chain getting involved. So that's really interesting. We have a couple of questions that already our audience has put through. So let me start with some of those, and I have a few myself. So first question is, what do you think about artificial intelligence being used in industry that need creative and human skills, especially in logistics and supply chain areas? So, I mean, I guess that raises the question of whether AI comes into play with uses of technologies like Hyperloop.
Yeah, in this case, AI, as I told you, it is key for the system, because our design from zero is fully autonomous. So within a fully autonomous way, we hope to fix everything that has to do with the human errors, but also everything that has to do with the OPEX, with the operating expenses. So yes, 100% AI is behind, is one of the technologies that we are using and is in our design from the very beginning.
Fantastic. So I mean, there's some questions here about cost. Let's just talk about getting a sense of the cost to implement some of these projects and how that compares to, other infrastructure and technologies. Because as someone on our Q&A pointed out, the logistics sector struggles with margin. The companies that don't necessarily have a lot of money sloshing around, and customers who often don't want to even pay rates, even when there's very little capacity. So I guess getting a sense of how that comes together for technology like Hyperloop.
Yeah, cost at the end, it has to do with the capex and with the opex. I encourage the whole audience to check out our feasibility study for the Great Lakes. It's a public paper that you can find on the internet. But in summary, two things. The first thing, we think that the capex is going to be much lower than anything that has to do with high-speed train. In average, in all over the world, the cost per kilometer, the capex cost per kilometer of the high-speed train is about $100 million. And in our case, we think that depending on the different geographies and the different solutions for passengers and cargo, we will be in the range of 20 up to $40 million. That means that not only from the capex point of view, it's also very important for the tax contributors' point of view, because the governments, they won't need to subsidize the infrastructure as they are doing with the train and also with the other transportation modes. So in summary, from the capex point of view, no subsidies and far below the high-speed train cost. And second, as I told you, regarding the OPEX, since the system is working through a tube, it is out of any impact of the weather conditions, of the congestion, and it is fully automated, we think that in terms of OpEx, also the system will be 100% competitive.
Okay, interesting. And in terms of time for implementation, I mean, obviously, you know, this would depend on a specific project. But if we looked at, you know, the example that you gave in the port there, you know, in Hamburg, for example, what sort of timelines would we be looking at?
Regarding this very specific initiative with the Port of Hamburg, we hope to release our whole solution to the world by the end of this year, first half next year. So it will be a fully commercial solution, able to give a Hyperloop solution to any port in the world.
Okay.
So that's the commercial approach in terms of solution.
Yeah.
And also in terms of prototype, we think that we will be able to also to release to the world the first prototype next year.
Okay, next year. So like I said, futuristic, but not necessarily really in the future, right? It's futuristic, but coming soon. But looking a little bit further out, we had a question from one of our audience members, one of our great team members, I have to add. How far off is the end-to-end autonomous system for this sort of transport, sort of from becoming a reality? So looking through your crystal ball there a little bit, I mean, do you think, you know, the 2020s is when we see a more fully autonomous kind of transport freight system, or is that, you know, kind of more in the 2030s and beyond?
Of course, it's going to be a phase-by-phase approach. You know that the main challenge in terms of fully autonomous trucks has to do sometimes not with the AI, but with the regulations. We think that in this case, our end-to-end solution has to do with the big trailers in long distances. It is not a last mile delivery with a small vans. We are talking about a shipping container in a long distance. We think that is going to be easier in terms of regulation and technology than the last mile distribution. And we foresee that it's something that is going to come in 2 or 3 years' time.
Okay, fantastic. I had another question here about how has the coronavirus crisis impact? Well, let's start at first impacting on these rollout plans, and then I have a follow-up to that. But in terms of, you know, the rollout of the kind of current and pipeline projects, has the coronavirus crisis had an impact?
No impact, I have to tell you. So the interest is from investors and from partners and stakeholders. It's just the other way around. You know, the transportation industry, in our view, is one of the, we can say, or one of the winners of this crisis. It is a tendency that was already there, but now everybody can see that the transportation industry is a really key industry today and for the future. So no impact, just the other way around.
Right. So, okay, interesting. So no impact there. And do you think it has, well, you mentioned it's increased investment. So in fact, do you think that this crisis has sort of raised the importance, raised the visibility of these kinds of new technology and the role that it can play?
Yeah, I think there is much more sensitivity in the public with everything that has to do with sustainable ways of transportation. And as I told you, our approach is from scratch, by design. We have 100% autonomous and fully sustainable system. As I think you saw in on the slides, the system is fully covered. The tubes are fully covered by photovoltaic solar system. So, as I told you, by design is 100% sustainable.
We had a session this morning where we were talking about EU, regulation, the Green Deal, lots of investment expected from, well, they will come from the EU, perhaps more from member states. Some other governments take a different approach. Do you see bigger investments coming as well from governments to kind of help go in this direction, or do you see more of this from the private sector, kind of collaborating with Hyperloop TT, for example?
I think it's going to be a mix, yes, of public and private financing. I have to tell you, we are right now raising $100 million in order to make the first prototype that I mentioned in Abu Dhabi. and all this, the fundraising is going in the right direction, and we hope to end by the first quarter next year everything that has to do with with raising funds. And as you were asking, we think that they're going to count the funds will come from public sector and from private future stakeholders of the system. I have to tell you that our approach as a company is that we are a technology company. So we are not going to operate the infrastructure, neither building up the infrastructure nor operating the infrastructure. So the system will be open with our technology to any operator or to any construction company interested in exploring the new system and operating the new system. So we are very optimistic, and we really hope that a lot of funds will come from different stakeholders' point of view to build up the system.
So in a way, will your business model also be partly on supporting that, and in a way also the software and AI technology that underpins it as well? So in a way, you're hardware and software kind of provider there too?
Yes, that's it. That's the approach. Yes, we are hardware and software company, a 100% technology company, and our aim is not to operate a system. That is going to be the strategy of other stakeholders. But our main goal is to build up the first Hyperloop system and to show to the world that the system is ready.
Yeah. Okay. Well, fantastic. Maybe we've got one last audience question, and then we'll close. We've partly covered this, but perhaps there's a bit more we've missed. So the question was, in addition to return on investment on speed, safety, and accuracy, are there other intangible benefits you can quantify in terms of environmental benefits? And you did allude to some of the sustainability and environmental kind of benefits, but were there any other kind of intangibles that you think you should mention here?
I think everything is mentioned. Is sustainability, is efficiency, is speed, is reliability, is also capacity. Regarding capacity, I would like to give you a very short explanation. Imagine that the system, as you saw in the animation, is we have a capsule departing every 40 seconds. So the capsules, they are, in the case of Hyperport solution, they're going to move one 40-footer shipping container every capsule. But we will be able to launch a capsule every minute. So in terms of capacity, the system is something that is one of our competitive advantages. Also, capacity is really key for us.
Well, that sort of shipping and takt time, does speak to some automotive processes as well. So, perhaps we're looking at solutions that might well apply into a really just-in-time scenarios too. That could be quite key. Juan, thank you so much for your time here and sharing it. I think a lot of interested viewers here, and for me personally as well, they're very exciting, of course, to see, as you mentioned in the beginning, a real innovation in something core on the transport side. So really exciting. I hope you'll stick around and watch more of our content and participate in some of our networking, as well as I'm sure our audience will be keen to connect with you too.
It's been a pleasure also for me. Thank you very much.
Great one. Okay, so thanks again to our audience. Stick around. We're coming back at you in just a few minutes with a special session on packaging, as I referenced, and we're not stopping there when it comes to the startups, as we've been alluding to. Today you'll hear more from Rivian and Ineos and a lot more to come. So stick around, and we can't wait to see you. Thanks again for everything. Chris Ludwig signing off. Signing off at some point, that is.